Hello and welcome to Study with Sudhir to the CBSE Class 11 English course. Today we are going to be reading, studying, understanding the rather complex and complicated chapter called Discovering Tut. This saga continues. Now, the manner in which the NCERT textbook has written this particular chapter, of course, taken from the National Geographic, it does not really make for very captivating reading. Let me warn you. Okay, so in this video, I will try to simplify it as much as possible to make it interesting for you, ताकि आपको समझने में थोड़ा इंटरेस्ट भी आए और पढ़ने में तो इंटरेस्ट आए और समझ में भी आए. Okay, now let's first understand about the author. The author's name is A.R. Williams or Anne Williams. She was a writer with the National Geographic magazine. Okay, and her specialization was in the field of archaeology. Okay, and she focused on different wonders of the world, and of course the mummies are one of the different wonders of the world, not the seven wonders but the different wonders of the world. The text, as I said, is taken from the National Geographic magazine. See, National Geographic magazine is of course for people who like to read that kind of stuff. When it is put in an NCERT textbook, you wonder whether a 16-17-year-old student can really understand and appreciate it to the same extent. Okay, what's the chapter about? The chapter is essentially about the discovery of the mysteries of the mummified body of King Tut of Egypt. Now, this is one of the photographs of King Tut. Okay, now what is a mummy, you may ask? Mummy is not our mummy. Okay, mummy is the body of a person preserved after death. It could be the body of an animal also. And why is a body essentially preserved? Because Egyptians believed in life after death. तो उनकी बॉडी को प्रिजर्व इस तरह से मम्मी के रूप में प्रिजर्व किया जाता था. And an Egyptian who could afford to pay for the expensive process of preserving his body for an afterlife, for a journey after death, that was called a mummy. Okay, so mummy essentially was that. So Tut died over 3,300 years ago. Okay, why this particular king is fascinating is because he ruled for only 9 years and then suddenly one day bulb fuse ho gaya, he died, and no one really knew why he suddenly died at such a young age, which is why he's also called the boy king. Now, I've told you what is a mummy. A pharaoh is another term which you should be aware of. Pharaoh, that's how it is pronounced. Okay, Pharoh. A ruler in ancient Egypt was known as a pharaoh. Okay, the chapter I've already told you what it is about. So King Tut died 3,300 years ago, and on the right hand side, the photograph that you see beneath me, these are the different ways in which the mummies are preserved. Okay, so these are fascinating photographs which you should know so that you understand the chapter much more. आप chapter के अंदर घुस जाओ तो समझने में इंटरेस्ट भी रहेगा, समझ में आसानी से आ भी जाएगा. Okay, now let me just tell you the story in brief so that उसके बाद जब हम टेक्स्ट को पढ़ेंगे, मैं यहाँ पे सिर्फ ब्रीफ नहीं बताऊंगा जैसे काफी लोग करते हैं. I'll read the entire chapter with you, but here let's understand what the story is in brief so that बाद में जब हम पढ़ें you'll be able to relate to it better. Now, Tut's family had ruled Egypt for centuries. Unke dada, pardada, babs, everybody was one of the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, and he was the 11th pharaoh. And as I said, he ruled for about 9 years and he died unexpectedly. So his tomb was discovered in 1922. Okay, so you're talking of exactly 100 years ago. His tomb was discovered and investigated in 1922 by a British archaeologist called Howard Carter. Okay, now there was also speculation during after the discovery of the tomb that he may have been murdered, because suddenly kaise unki mrityu hui, nobody really knew about it. Okay, so the chapter talks about the developments in the field of archaeology, x-rays, CT scans, jiski wajah se certain aspects were established, and we will be discussing that. Okay, now his father, grandfather, they had all ruled that. We will be reading about that in the chapter. He took on the name of Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun, who is a god of Egypt, right? And there is also talk of the Pharaoh's curse, that anyone who goes near or does something to the mummy may actually get affected adversely, ki kuch ho jayega. So it's like a shrap, it's like a curse. So this was a superstition which was there, but Howard Carter could not believe in all these things. He was a European, usko kuch farak nahi padta tha. He was a Britisher. Okay. Now the thing was, it was very difficult to take out the mummy because अंदर को था ना वहां से, and it all the sticking material, the resins which were used, they had all got solidified. तो उसमें से body को, mummy को निकालना was very difficult. He ended up breaking it to take it out into different pieces, and there was a lot of damage to the mummy, जिससे कि Egyptians को काफी गुस्सा आया. They were not at all happy or amused by what Carter had done to the mummy of King Tut. Okay, then there was the tale of the missing bone कि 1968 में एक anatomy के professor ने X-ray किया. Now, X-ray is not really a three-dimensional kind of a photograph. Okay, it revealed that Tut's breastbone and front ribs are missing. तो इससे काफी लोगों को अच्छा नहीं लगा. And thereafter there was a CT scan which was done. So CT scan जो कि human beings पे होता है, पहली बारी एक मम्मी पे हुआ. Okay, so King Tut was, established something new in that sense. So उनके ऊपर CT scan हुआ to establish that no damage had been done to Tut's mummy. Okay, so that is something very important. So the entire process के बारे में chapter में लिखा गया है, जिसके बारे में हम पढ़ेंगे. Okay, so let's get started with the chapter. We'll go through it slowly. I'll explain each and every word. All the notes में, apart from the question and answers which I have written close to about 18-20 question and answers, इसके अलावा सारे जो important words and phrases हैं सबके meanings भी लिखे हुए हैं. So once you go through the video, then you look at the notes and the question and answers, you will be able to understand and deal with this particular chapter pretty easily. Okay, ये promise है. Okay. Okay, now you can see the text on your screen. This is from your NCERT textbook, Hornbill NCERT textbook. इसमें जो words लिखे हैं उसके बारे में I will tell you. Let's go through the initial part. He was just a teenager, और इसकी यहाँ पे caricature एक sketch बनाया गया है, not caricature. He was just a teenager when he died. यानी कि teenager मतलब teens में था, very young. So that means his age would have been in that 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 kind of age, right? The last heir of a powerful family. Last heir matlab jo uttaraadhikari that had ruled Egypt and its empire for centuries. He was laid to rest, yani ki unko dafnaya gaya, laden with gold and eventually forgotten. Kafi sare sone ke saath unko dafnaya gaya and bhul gaye log. Since the discovery of his tomb in 1922, the modern world has speculated about what happened to him. Yani ki there is curiosity. How did he die? Okay, and at what age precisely he died? Okay, about what had happened to him, with murder being the most extreme possibility कि क्या किसी ने उसका खून किया. Now leaving his tomb for the first time in almost 80 years, Tut has undergone a CT scan that offers new clues about his life and death and provides precise data for an accurate forensic reconstruction of the boyish pharaoh. Now, forensics is what? It's a branch of science that helps us to kind of get an idea about the life of that particular human being, from the blood, from the skin, from the hair part, from fingerprints, anything. Even the slightest strand, usme se DNA nikal ke they can establish that, right? Now, let's go again. An angry wind stirred up ghostly dust devils as King Tut was taken from his resting place in the ancient Egyptian cemetery known as the Valley of the Kings. Now, the Valley of the Kings, आगे map दिया गया है कि Egypt में Nile River के पास the Valley of the Kings is there, where many of these kind of kings are laid to rest. Now, the ghostly dust devils, इस phrase का क्या मतलब है कि जब आंधी जोर से चलती है, when the winds blow very fast, it raises the dust which appears like a devil. Okay, so you are trying to almost personify the wind and the dust almost like a devil. Okay, when he was taken out from his resting place, right? So there is as though the environment around is not happy about what is happening. You understand? That's how a superstitious mind will probably interpret this natural phenomena that is happening. An angry wind, the wind has been personified. Usko gussa aa raha tha. Dark bellied clouds had scudded across the desert sky all day and now were veiling the stars in cascade gray. Scudded, symmetry, of course, is the large burial ground. Scudded across means moving quickly. Okay. Valley of Kings, I've already told you, it's near the Nile. It's the western part. It's towards the west of the Red Sea and located south of Cairo. Cairo is the capital city of Egypt. Okay. Cascade gray is reference to the gray clouds. Cascade is the, what do you call it? Where the coffin, the casket, it's also referred to as a casket. Okay. The stars are like the jewels kept in the casket. Okay. So the casket gray is again a very gloomy kind of a negative kind of a color. Okay. It was 6 p.m. on the 5th of January 2005. Is date ko yaad rakhiyega. Okay. The world's most famous mummy glided headfirst into a CT scanner, brought here to probe the lingering medical mysteries of this little understood young ruler who died more than 3,300 years ago. Now, what is happening is that अभी जो हुआ है उसके बारे में बोला है और पूरा कहानी फ्लैशबैक में बता के वापस उसी में आते हैं. Okay, so what happened? Glide means moving slowly in a smooth कंटिन्यूअस काइंड ऑफ मोशन को ग्लाइड बोलते हैं. लाइक ग्लाइडर होता है ना, ग्लाइडर ऐसे करके इट काइंड ऑफ मूव्स अराउंड. जैसे आपने शुरू के ग्लाइडर वगैरह की फोटोग्राफ्स या वीडियोस देखे होंगे. नाउ ऑल afternoon, the usual line of tourists from around the world had descended into the cramped rock cut. Rock cut means made by cutting a large rock, tomb some 26 feet underground to pay their respects to King Tut's mummy. They gazed at the murals. Murals is like the paintings on the rocks, the walls, जैसे पुराने जमाने में होता था, on the walls of the burial chamber and peered at Tut's gilded face. Glided and gilded, these are two different words. Glided is a reference to the motion. Gilded is a reference to the covering by a thin sheet of gold. Okay, सोने की पतली सी covering. They gazed at the murals on the walls of the burial chamber and peered at Tut's gilded face, the most striking feature of his mummy-shaped outer coffin lid. Okay, the gold was a striking feature. Some visitors read from guidebooks in a whisper. Why in a whisper? Because you see, when you are in that kind of an atmosphere, you feel a little reluctant to speak loudly. और भाई क्या हाल चाल, उस टोन में हम बात नहीं करेंगे, right? You are also a little conscious of the surroundings in which you are, right? You have gone beneath the earth, so you are also a little overawed by the environment, by the atmosphere out there, right? Others stood silently. So there is kind of silence out there, perhaps pondering, सोच रहे हैं Tut's untimely death in his late teens, or wondering with a shiver if the Pharaoh's curse, what is the Pharaoh's curse? The Pharaoh's curse की वजह से death और misfortune falling upon those who disturbed him. कि इतने सारे जो टूरिस्ट 26 फीट नीचे उतरकर 26 feet below the earth, they have come. Are they disturbing him? And if they are disturbing him, will the Pharaoh's curse fall upon them? And what could happen? Either death or some kind of misfortune. Whether that superstition of a Pharaoh's curse was really true or not. So they are all wondering. सहमे से हुए हैं, नीचे आ गए हैं, ज्यादा बातचीत नहीं कर रहे हैं. They are standing quietly, silently looking at what is happening, absorbing it. But दिमाग में ये चल रहा है. They are all wondering whether they will be the target of the Pharaoh's curse. Okay. The mummy is in a very bad condition because of what Carter did in the 1920s, said Zahi Hawass, important person. Towards the end of the story, he comes again. He was the Secretary General of the Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. Antiquities means जो पुरानी चीजों की देखभाल करता था, उस department का Secretary General था. As he leaned over the body for a long first look, Howard Carter, was the British archaeologist who in 1922 discovered Tut's tomb after years of futile searching. Its contents, though hastily ransacked in antiquity, were surprisingly complete, right? Now, he's talking about what Howard Carter had done in the year 1922. He had discovered Tut's tomb because everyone had forgotten about it. Its contents, that is, mummy ke us coffin ke andar jo bhi tha, were kind of, ransacked. They were not put together very properly. They remain the richest royal collection ever found and have become part of the pharaoh's legend. कहानियां जो बनती हैं, legend जो बनते हैं, right? Stunning artifacts, यानी कि सोने के, lot of ornaments, and in very, old ornaments, obviously very precious. In gold, their eternal brilliance meant to guarantee resurrection. Resurrection is restoration to life. That is what I said. The Egyptians believed in life after death. Caused a sensation at the time of the discovery and still get the most attention. But Tut was also buried with everyday things he would want in the afterlife. And what is the after? It's almost very, you think it's almost very funny, right? Board games, a bronze razor, linen undergarments, cases of food and wine, as though he will be using all these things after death, as though he will be shaving with that bronze razor after he is no more, as if he would be consuming food and wine after he is dead. But that was what the belief of the Egyptians was. After months of carefully recording the pharaoh's funerary treasures, which is referring to all these valuable treasures with which King Tut was buried, Carter began investigating his 3 nested coffins. Opening the first, he found a shroud adorned with garlands of willow and olive leaves, wild celery, and lotus petals and cornflowers, the faded evidence of a burial in March or April. इसके बारे में मैंने क्वेश्चन आंसर में क्वेश्चन भी लिखा हुआ है. Now about the 3 nested coffins, 3 coffins जिसकी फोटोग्राफ मैंने शुरू में दिखाई, placed one inside the other in order of decreasing size. The innermost coffin houses the body of the king. So it was kept in a very complicated and complex manner, and the total weight was 110 kg. I'm just telling you all these things, and I have put in a particular article which was published in the newspaper at that time, which will just, you can just go through it, just of interest. If you don't want to go through it also, it's fine, but I put it in the notes. It just contains some interesting aspects about the coffins. Okay, now here celery is a marshland plant. Okay, shroud is a cloth in which the body is wrapped. Okay, and garlands of willow means a wreath, जो round color का एक wreath, round shape में जो wreath place करते हैं to pay homage, that is placed over a dead body of flowers and leaves. Okay, the faded evidence. So लगता है कि उसकी death March April में हुई हो, because all these petals and flowers etc. are generally found in that month, in that season. When he finally reached the mummy, that is Carter, though he ran into trouble. What was the trouble? The ritual resins had hardened. Now, resins are a sticky substance that is insoluble in water, used to stick different to a surface, right? The ritual resins had hardened because itne saalon se they had become very, very solidified, cementing Tut to the bottom of a solid gold coffin. No amount of legitimate force, legitimate यानी कि नॉर्मल फोर्स लगा के उसको निकालना असंभव था. इट वाज नॉट पॉसिबल. सो ही हैड टू यूज illegitimate means is the point that is being made. No amount of legitimate force could move them. Carter wrote later what was to be done. The sun can beat down like a hammer this far south in Egypt. It's very, very hot out there. And Carter tried to use this harsh sunlight in order to loosen the resins, by keeping the resins in the sunlight for several hours. और यहाँ पे आप मैप देख लीजिए, and you can see जहाँ पे ये Valley of Kings, जहाँ पे ये arrow है, Luxor, Thebes दिखा है, that is where the Valley of Kings is, and you can see dotted lines में you can see the Nile River passing by. Okay. He set the mummy outside in blazing sunshine that heated it to 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing but kuch nahi hua. He reported with scientific detachment. Detachment means, like a scientist. He's saying that the consolidated material had to be chiseled away from beneath the limbs and trunk before it was possible to raise the king's remains. So he's a scientist. Usko farak nahi padta, ye mummy hai, ye raja ka mummy hai, raja ka sharir hai, usko koi farak nahi padta. Like a scientist without any emotion. Detachment means emotionless. He said that this has to be removed in bits and pieces. In his defense, Carter really had little choice. उसके पास और कोई चारा भी नहीं था. If he had not cut the mummy free, thieves most certainly would have circumvented the guards and ripped it apart to remove the gold. Now, circumvented means found a way around, right? गार्ड्स को ब्राइब दे सकते थे, रिश्वत दे सकते थे, एंड सोना चुरा सकते थे, right? In Tut's time, the royals were fabulously wealthy, and they thought or hoped they could take their riches with them. That was the belief at that time. For his journey to the great beyond, afterlife, right? King Tut was lavished with glittering goods, precious collars, inlaid necklaces and bracelets, rings, amulets, ये सब different types of jewelry. A ceremonial apron, sandals, sheaths for his fingers. Sheaths is a close fitting cover for his fingers and toes, and the now iconic inner coffin and mask, all of pure gold. ये सारी चीजें आप जरा याद रखिएगा. Just note it down. Okay. To separate Tut from his adornments, Carter's men removed the mummy's head and severed nearly every major joint. हर joint को अलग अलग करके निकाला. क्यों? Because the resins had solidified. It was not possible to remove him from the coffin. Once they had finished, they reassembled the remains on a layer of sand in a wooden box with padding that concealed the damage. Damage को cover करते हुए the bed where Tut now rests. Okay. Archaeology has changed substantially in the intervening decades. 1922 के बाद archaeology में काफी सारे advancements हुए हैं, focusing less on treasure and more on the fascinating details of life. Because the mistake that Howard Carter seemed to have made in terms of approach was that he was very focused on the treasure. सोने के ऊपर उसकी नजर थी, सोने के ऊपर उसका फोकस था. ये नहीं कि उसके पीछे जो कहानी है, जो फैसिनेटिंग स्टोरी है, उसके बारे में कार्टर में उसमें कार्टर को ज्यादा दिलचस्पी नहीं थी. He was not too interested in the story, the stories behind King Tut's disappearance, the intriguing mysteries of life. Intriguing means suspenseful mysteries of life. It also uses more sophisticated tools, that is modern day archaeology, including medical technology. In 1968, more than 40 years after Carter's discovery, an anatomy professor ने एक्सरे किया इस मम्मी का, किंग टुट की मम्मी का एक्सरे किया, and he revealed a startling fact, shocking fact. What? That beneath the resin that cakes his chest, cakes मतलब उसके ऊपर एक केक की तरह है अभी, his breastbone and front ribs are missing. Obviously there was shock that Carter ने इतना डैमेज किया कि इसका breastbone and front ribs are now missing. So the body is not intact, is what the anatomy professor said. Today, diagnostic imaging can be done with computed tomography. Computed tomography is what is CT scan. Tomography is a technique for displaying a representation of a cross-section of the human body by sending X-rays or ultrasound, जिससे कि एक 3-dimensional image मिल सकती है, by which hundreds of X-rays in cross-section are put together like slices of bread to create a 3D virtual body. What more would a CT scan reveal of Tut than an X-ray? Obviously, X-ray से ये बढ़ चढ़कर है. It is more advanced than an X-ray. And could it answer two of the biggest questions still lingering about him? What were the two questions? ये भी एक question की तरह आ सकता है. How did he die? And how old was he at the time of his death? Okay. King Tut's demise was a big event, even by royal standards. Now, और flashback में जा रहे हैं, हमको King Tut के पहले की कहानी के बारे में बताया जा रहा है. Even by royal standards, he was the last in the family's clan, and his funeral was the death rattle of a dynasty. What is the death rattle? Death rattle means that the end is near. इसकी King Tut's death brought about the death, the end of his dynasty. Okay. Amenhotep III, Tut's father or grandfather, more likely his grandfather, was a powerful pharaoh who ruled for almost 4 decades at the height of the 18th dynasty's golden age. His son Amenhotep IV succeeded him and initiated one of the strangest periods in the history of ancient Egypt. The new pharaoh promoted the worship of Aten, the sun disk, यानी कि जो भगवान की वर्शिप वहां होती थी उसको चेंज करके एक नए गॉड को इंट्रोड्यूस किया, and he started worshipping Aten. Okay, और उसने अपना खुद का नाम भी Akhenaten कर दिया, that is a servant of the Aten, and he also moved the capital from the old city of Thebes, जो कि मैंने आपको दिखाया अभी मैप में, आप लेफ्ट हैंड साइड मैप में देख सकते हैं, to the new city of Akhenaten. Okay, now known as Amarna. So ये नाम, पुराने नाम, नए नाम एक टेबल में लिख के रख लीजिए ताकि आपको याद रहे, कंफ्यूजन ना हो. He further shocked the country because down there were attacks on Amun, the major god जिसके पहले नाम था, smashing the images, closing his temples. And Ray Johnson, who is the director of the University of Chicago's Research Center at Luxor, he said that this must have been a horrific time because the family that had ruled for centuries was coming to an end, and then Akhenaten went a little wacky. So आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है कि why did Ray Johnson feel that he was going a little wacky? Wacky मतलब a little crazy, a little pagal. After Akhenaten's death, a mysterious ruler named Smenkhare appeared briefly and exited with hardly a trace. So maybe for a little time he was a ruler, and then King Tut ascended the throne. He became the king. Okay, he changed his name to Tutankhamun, a living image of Amun, and oversaw a restoration of the old ways. जो पहले जो reversal किया था उसको वापस कर दिया. Okay, and he reigned for 9 years and then he died unexpectedly. Now, regardless of his name and the speculations about his fate, Tut is one mummy among many in Egypt. He's not the only mummy. There are many mummies in Egypt. How many? No one knows. The Egyptian Mummy Project, which began in inventory मतलब सबका record रखो कितने mummies हैं, किसके हैं, in late 2003 had recorded almost 600 mummies so far, and they're still counting. 600 से भी ज्यादा हो सकते हैं, because सब नीचे नीचे हैं, पता नहीं कि उसको ढूंढना भी मुश्किल है कितने होंगे जमीन के नीचे. The next phase, scanning the mummies with a portable CT machine donated by the National Geographic Society and Siemens company का तो नाम आपने सुना होगा, its manufacturer. King Tut is one of the first mummies to be scanned in death as in life, moving regally ahead of his countrymen. That is, in life as the king he was the number one. Now in death also he's number one because he's one of the first mummies to be CT scanned. Okay, a CT machine scanned the mummy head to toe, सर से लेके पांव तक, creating 1,700 digital X-ray images in cross section. Tut's head scanned in 0.62 millimeter slices to register intricate details, structures, takes an eerie मतलब takes on eerie detail, you know, कि थोड़ा सा you almost feel कि अरे क्या हो रहा है, इतने साल पुराना चीज को हम अभी CT scan कर रहे हैं, right? But Tut's entire body similarly recorded. A team of specialists in radiology, forensics, and anatomy, different sciences के specialists coming together to probe, to investigate the secrets that the winged goddesses of a gilded burial shrine protected for so long. Winged matlab the goddesses with wings etc. had protected. That must have been outside where the burial site was. The night of the scan, the workman carried Tut from the tomb in his box like pallbearers, like चार लोग carry करते हैं ना coffin को. They climbed a ramp मतलब ऊपर निकले, and a flight of stairs into the swirling sand outside. बाहर इतनी सारी आंधी की तरह चल रही है, रेत is flying around. Then rose on a hydraulic lift into the trailer that held the scanner, जहाँ पे CT scan machine थी. 20 minutes later, two men emerged, sprinted for an office nearby. पास में एक ऑफिस भी establish किया गया था, वहां पर भागे, and returned with a pair of white plastic fans. Why? Because the $1 million scanner that Siemens had given to National Geographic had quit, had stopped working because of sand in the cooler fan. Fan के अंदर, cooler fan के अंदर रेत आ गई थी. And they said, curse of the pharaoh, joked the guard nervously. So दो बारी instances हैं pharaoh's curse का, एक तो टूरिस्ट की तरफ से और अभी एक गार्ड की तरफ से. Eventually, the substitute fans worked well enough to finish the procedure. एक और फैन लगाया गया और CT scan खत्म हुआ. After checking that no data had been lost, the technicians turned Tut over to the workmen who carried him back to his tomb. CT scan खत्म हुआ, वापस उसको अपने tomb में ले गए. Less than 3 hours after he was removed from his coffin, the pharaoh again rested in peace where the funerary priest had laid him so long ago. Now he was back in his tomb. Back in the trailer, a technician pulled up astonishing image. जो CT scan हुआ था उसकी images भी तो देखनी है ना, of Tut on a computer screen. A grey head took shape from a scattering of pixels. जिस तरह से image form होती है ना, pixelated images. And the technician spun and tilted it in every direction. Neck vertebrae appeared as clearly as in an anatomy class. Other images revealed a hand, several views of the rib cage, and a transection of the skull. But for now, the pressure was off because everything was proper. And sitting back in his chair, Zahi Hawa smiled, visibly relieved that nothing had gone seriously wrong. तो जो एक्सरे था वो ठीक नहीं था कि ये सब मिसिंग है. He said, I didn't sleep last night, not for a second. I was so worried, but now I think I will go and sleep. यहाँ पर एक इमेज है अगेन ऑफ किंग टुट. इट्स अ म्यूरल. जो इमेजेस वहां पे दीवारों में बनी होती हैं, इट शोज किंग टुट विद ओसिरिस द गॉड ऑफ द आफ्टर लाइफ. सो द लेफ्ट हैंड साइड पे इज द गॉड ऑफ द आफ्टर लाइफ, जो लाइफ आफ्टर डेथ के बारे में they take care. By the time we left the trailer, descending metal stairs into the sandy ground, the wind had stopped. The winter air lay cold and still like death itself. It's absolutely quiet, right? In this valley of the departed. It's the valley of the departed means the valley of the dead, people who are no more. Just above the entrance to Tut's tomb stood Orion. Orion is a constellation of stars. 3 stars का एक constellation की तरह line में होते हैं. Not an exact line, but more or less. The constellation that the ancient Egyptians knew as the soul of Osiris, the god of afterlife, watching over the boy king. Okay, so it's almost like the guardian which is looking after the tomb, the final resting place of King Tut. Okay, now if you look at the PDF, you will find the notes, the word meanings, and lots of questions and answers. I'll tell you exactly how many. There are 19 questions and answers, which will cover every aspect of this particular chapter, ताकि आपको exam में कोई भी मुश्किल नहीं होगी. I hope this chapter is clear. Little complicated. Please read it 2-3 times so that you get a hang of the chapter and the different terms which have been used in the chapter. Okay. I hope I managed to simplify it for you. Thank you very much for watching.